Good evening. I'm John Bailey. This is People to be Heard, the program where people who have something to say have their say. And tonight, you've got White Plains Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Joseph Ricca, for his first appearance on People to be Heard. Welcome to the program, Dr. Ricca, and thanks for taking the time out of your very, very busy schedule, as we were just discussing. And just to set the scene for you, Dr. Ricca became Superintendent of Schools of the White Plains City School District 6 months ago, approximately, and we thought we'd give him about 6 months to get settled in, and now he's ready to for people to be heard exposure. So, first of all, Dr. Ricca, you come to us from the Elmsford Union Free School District, where you were superintendent for 4 years, and before that, East Hanover, New Jersey. So you have had experience as a superintendent, and you are in for the long haul here at White Plains. There's nothing interim about you.
That's right.
And that's right, and this is fantastic because we haven't had that privilege for a while. Now, Dr. Ricca, welcome to the program. You're superintendent of schools for 7 months. What are the district's strengths and weaknesses?
Well, again, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here. I've watched some of your previous shows with previous superintendents, and yes, I'm not interim, which is nice.
Yeah, right.
You know, I could talk about the district's strengths for an hour program. One of the things that I immediately noticed upon visiting White Plains, and certainly, you know, being down the road and serving in Elmsford, I had a really good handle in terms of the city. But the school district is extraordinary. You know, whether it is you'd like to focus on enrichment opportunities for children, whether you'd like to focus on extracurriculars, STEM, the arts, connections to community, we have it all. And I can honestly say now, of course, you know, I have a vested interest, but I can honestly say that I believe that the White Plains City School District exceeds many, many school districts far and wide in terms of our ability to serve our students and connect with our community. I think those strengths continue to drive the district forward. You know, the relationships that we have with community partners, parents and guardians, you go to an event, and you know, John, you've been to many of our events.
Exactly.
They're packed.
Yes, they are.
The pride that folks have in White Plains, second to none.
Absolutely, right. And the community supports the district budget every year in
Amazing.
Record numbers.
Amazing.
So we have no weaknesses.
Well, listen, I'm not, you know, I don't want to talk about weaknesses, but what I can definitely tell you is we have areas for improvement, right? Like anywhere else. You know, our Board of Education and our school community focuses on a continuous improvement model, which means that even when we're great, we don't rest on our laurels. So we have areas that we're focusing on, and I know my predecessors spoke with you about that, Dr. Smith and Dr. Freed, before that Mr. Connors. We talked about areas that we want to continue to improve rigor, we want to continue to improve student outcomes. And we are really, I think, moving in a fantastic direction that way.
Right.
But there's always more work to be done, John.
Right, and we were absolutely impressed with the long-range planning circular. That is, you can see everybody on the city school district website, and it has a new address this year. What is it?
Oh, yeah, sure. So www.wpcsdschools.org.
Very good. Very simple.
Or whiteplainschools.org.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, the long range planning takes us through 20, 21, and 22. And what was interesting to me was at the end, it says you want to focus on creating a college-focused culture district-wide with a focus on students in the middle of achievements to mold them into college material. How are we doing that?
Well, I think, you know, the approach has to be looking at all of our kids all of the time, right? And we need to make sure that from the beginning of their school career that they're coming to us and they're school ready. And as they progress through and matriculate through the grades, that we're providing the appropriate focuses dependent upon their developmental levels. Again, understanding that all kids are going to be different, right? And then as they progress up through the high school years, giving them, and middle and high school, continuing to give them the opportunity to be challenged and explore their passions.
And how do you make that selection? Who do you groom selections? How are you going to do that?
In which way?
In picking the students that you feel can be brought up to college entrance.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
We believe that all of our students should have that opportunity to move forward, and we've done a lot of work in previous years reducing barriers that had sometimes been in place traditionally, where students weren't able to necessarily access higher level classes, right, honors and AP level classes, and those barriers have been removed. So there's much more opportunity for students at varying levels to be able to be exposed to that college preparatory track.
Right, and at this time the report is focusing on the budget in the immediate
Sure.
and time interval, and the report is suggesting a projected, I use the word projected because it could change, 4.79% increase in the tax levy. Do you expect this to be whittled down by the time the budget is finalized?
Sure. So in the long-range plan, when we initially presented it probably about a month ago or so ago, that was initially the percentage that we thought it could be. It's since already changed. We had anticipated that some pilots would be coming back onto the tax rolls. We've later since learned that that's not the case, which of course will reduce the percentage increase. And we're very confident that we're going to be well within the tax cap, and likely below 4.
Below 4, probably.
It's hard to say.
3.5,
Yeah,
3.7?
it's hard to say at this point in time. And I'll tell you, one of the things you learn in 9 years of being superintendent is you never predict the percentage before the Board of Education's approved it.
Okay, so this is already down a tad.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and can we expect the $5 to $6 million growth in the budget every year, which appears to be the case?
So that's another great question, and you know, your question is one that sort of reaches for stability and the ability to predict. Unfortunately, as you know, the situation we find ourselves in is pretty much an unpredictable situation related to the tax cap. And you've heard this several times. We don't necessarily know what that percentage will be, that allowable percentage will be year to year. So while this year, it did go up this year, absolutely.
Up to 2.
We saw a stronger economy this year and growth factor, and we're finally up to 2, right? It's usually called a 2% tax cap, but it's rarely that. I can't say with any certainty that those increases would be the same, but what I can tell you with certainty is that every approach that we're going to take to our budget is going to be one of fiscal responsibility, making sure that any dollar asked for is a dollar needed, and making sure that any dollar spent is spent wisely.
But you're sort of caught in a paradox, because if you cut the budget, then you're sort of stuck with that for the next year, and you might have to go lower even next year.
And then your so then your base begins lower, which I think is an unintended consequence of a decision to try and rein in local property taxes, right? So now school districts actually find themselves in a situation where if they are in one particular year able to cut taxes, which I've done in other school districts, you can't recover from that in the following year if you find that increases are required. So it's a tough situation, but White Plains has done a tremendous job over the course of its history.
Yes, thanks to the tax cap.
Thanks to the tax cap, and I think I can say with great certainty that our Board of Education is very conscious of the strain on the taxpayer.
So basically, the budget looks like we're sort of stuck with not being able to cut, because theoretically the programs will be working from here on out.
So what we've done to try and mitigate that situation is we've really tried to make sure that our programming is being reviewed, and when necessary that we reallocate funding in areas within the budget to be able to support innovative programming, right? So while we're not necessarily growing at leaps and bounds or cutting program, we are making shifts internally year to year based on what our children need. And that helps, I think, provide us with some stability, while at the same time ensure that the school district remains a fantastic district where people want to move to White Plains so that their kids can attend the White Plains Public Schools.
Where the taxes are always low and
Always
your
low.
children, low comparison with many communities.
You're absolutely right.
That's why we moved here
Right.
many, many years ago. And one issue that is not mentioned in the long-range planning is the district's lack of significant progress in English language assessment results at the 8th grade level. You had a similar problem in Elmsford, and you upgraded the assessment results there to the White Plains level, 29% to 38%, I think, in Elmsford last year at the 8th grade level, which is the level I look at because that's high school ready.
Sure.
And the 8 years are down the drain.
Sure.
So that's the key factor. So how are you addressing this? We had discussed just before the program.
Right. So, and that's a great question, and it's one that we get often because assessment, high stakes assessment, is a big conversation in public education these days. The first thing that I'll say is we don't teach to tests, right? Okay. We teach children. And you get to higher test scores by making sure that you're providing consistent training to your faculty and staff members and providing stability for them to be able to teach the curricular areas and the standards on which the children are going to be tested. So we've had stability in that area, and we did the same in Elmsford. We provided a stable ground for faculty and staff members to work and train and become more familiar and achieve mastery in the curricular expectations so that year to year to year children we're on the same and similar trajectory. We're not switching methods, we're not switching curricula constantly. Unfortunately, what we do tend to see is we tend to see standard shift at the state level and the federal level, which of course impacts. Now there's also a question as to whether or not the assessments as they're currently created are created in such a way that students have a more difficult time because the levels of expectation have been increased.
Now, theoretically, I was reading on the State Education Department site last night that they didn't really change the content of the tests too much. They allowed more time to do the test. And now, do you feel the content really needs adjustment?
I think that the state is taking a good approach by allowing actual educators to look at the test items and to weigh in on the creation of test items in relation to what's being taught in our classrooms statewide. I think that helps. I think that when you buy a test off the shelf from a multinational corporation,
Pearson,
you're never going to get as good of an assessment as Mrs. Smith can give you on the lesson she just gave all week.
Now, the assessment results mean that the tests are still too difficult. Do the local grade evaluations, are they not as effective or as rigorous? And in fact, the long-range planning is initiating a new procedure to do this grade by grade. Could you elaborate on it?
Yeah, sure. So our faculty members and our principals in our buildings constantly work with our children to identify their area of mastery, what level of development they're at, provide benchmarks, and then reassess from time to time to determine whether or not students are progressing or whether or not they're experiencing difficulty. Absolutely, they're getting it, right? High stakes standardized assessments happen one time a year, right? It's one shot, in and out, and then a lot hangs in the balance. I believe, and research indicates, that the best predictor of student success in college, right, 2-year, 4-year, is their success in high school, not how they did on a standardized assessment. So while there is, I think, a link between high-stakes standardized assessment outcomes and student achievement in school, I don't know that we're necessarily getting the exact picture on how Johnny's doing by looking at just his high-stakes standardized assessment scores. I think looking at his report card, talking with his teachers, and sort of looking at that picture as a whole gives us a much better sense of whether or not our kids are moving forward. And that's what we're doing. That's what the long-range plan is talking about. It's talking about making sure we have multiple measures in our schools to be able to identify and support.
Basically, so you are tinkering with those grade-to-grade evaluations used in the classroom.
We are,
correct?
And those, I tell you, the ability to assess in the class. And remember, assessment's not just a paper pencil test or a computer test. Assessment's me and you talking, and me as the teacher understanding or hearing you tell me what we just talked about. So teachers are constantly assessing, and then they're tailoring their instruction based on what their children are learning, or the areas that need more attention.
Okay, enough of my pet peeve, assessments, but there's an effort mentioned in the long-range report to trim the cost of the transportation program along in place in White Plains. What could this mean for students and their parents?
Well, it can mean a few things. Number one, the first thing it means is I think it reifies the Board of Education's commitment and the administration's commitment to not rest on our laurels, to constantly explore our present structure within the organization and identify ways that we can both provide better service and also identify efficiencies if possible. We're looking at our transportation paradigm right now. Any changes that would be proposed to it, right, would be proposed to provide as good or better service. And I'm going to hedge on the side of saying better service.
Better service.
Better service. You know, and we're still fleshing it out. We're still looking at it. We're working with our transportation company. We're working with our transportation coordinator in our business office. But we're looking for ways.
So no move to eliminate the busing.
Oh, quite the
from
contrary,
school.
John. No. We're looking.
Okay.
We're looking in the other direction. We're looking to be able to provide, like I said, if the service is good now, as good or better. So we're not looking to actually remove service. We're looking to support it and perhaps expand it.
I see. Could you explain how the State Education Department requirement of a choice for English language learners representing 20% of a grade, like a particular language, would have a choice of bilingual instruction or native language instruction? How is that being met?
So
at this time.
Right, and I know that we've talked about this before, and the district has done a great job, I think, in moving forward and achieving the spirit of the requirements related to the commissioner's regulation. A couple of things, you know, if you have 20 or more students that speak the same language, you have to make sure you're providing that instructional support.
Yeah.
Right. We have utilized our dual language program in two ways. One, as a true bilingual education program, and another way to be able to provide those E&L services that are provided for English language learners. So we actually have students who are native English speakers benefiting from the ability to learn in Spanish, and at the same time we're helping to service those students who come to us and don't speak English.
And how long before this gets rolled out? I believe the previous superintendent for instruction said that you need at least 20 new staff to handle this throughout the grades. How do you see that down the scope of time?
So the first thing I'll tell you, what we're doing this year, and a credit to the Board of Education and certainly my colleague Dr. Hand and her team in the Curriculum Instruction Office, is we're actually researching our program and evaluating it right now. We're working with the Center for Applied Linguistics, who are working within White Plains to study our dual language program and identify strengths and weaknesses and provide recommendations for the future. So we're not making any snap decisions on scaling the entire program up in all 5 schools. Right now, it's available in 3 of our schools, and Church Street opened up this year. We'll be moving up into first grade next year as well. But we're more focused at this time in understanding how things are working well and how we can make them better.
And it's very popular with both the English language learners and the English learners.
It's very popular. And look, I mean, you know, you think about you want to learn an instrument, you want to be great on the court or on the field, you want to learn a language. I mean, this is, again, it's another example, John, of how the White Plains City School District is providing more experiences for children.
Yes, we conceived this before it became
In
state
vogue.
state
Or required.
department state education department
Absolutely.
focus. The long-range planning report says the district is at capacity or near capacity across the district schools. Do you see a need for building a 6th elementary school or expanding the middle schools? You're looking at that, right?
Well, listen, you know, we're always looking at all of our options. At this moment right now, I have no designs of saying to you, John, we need to build another school. What I will tell you is that we're certainly looking at all of our spaces, how we're using them, and looking at potential ways to either expand space, you know, existing space, or reconfigure to better meet the needs of our children. Listen, our class sizes are still really great in terms of student to teacher ratios.
22 to 1?
Absolutely.
Right.
You don't have classes packed with 38, 40 children, right? But at the same time, we do recognize that our facilities are, you know, we're 7,200 plus students. So we're right there. But we're certainly not, you know, in a place of emergence.
Okay, so that's down the road, building a new school.
Well, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you right now. White Plains is going to continue to stay very popular. Folks are going to move here because they know it's a great city and they want their kids to have a great education. We're going to continue to expand.
Yeah, the school district and the city have in the past attempted to combine services. We've saved money. Well, we haven't, because somebody has to pay for it, either the city taxpayer or the school taxpayer.
Right.
Is there any hope for this to
Oh, I'm always
expand?
hopeful, and I can tell you when I arrived officially arrived in the city and had an opportunity to meet with Mayor Roach and the Common Council members and the department heads. You know, to me, it's a tremendous relationship, supportive relationship between both the city and the school district. True, we do have areas that we're presently sharing services in terms of facilities, in terms of maintenance on vehicles, and we're always looking at more ways that we can partner with the city, because you're right. You know, there's always somebody's paying for it, right? But we don't have to have redundancy sometimes. So if we can look for ways to work with, for instance, law enforcement, right? We work with the Department of Public Safety.
Yeah. Well, I think the Public Safety Department has done a terrific job in the White Plains schools, providing security without presence.
I'll tell you what.
You know, the feeling that you're in an armed camp.
Absolutely, right? And that's a great way to put it. You know, our police officers regularly visit our buildings. They're part of our school community. We have school resource officers who are available to our children, and they're not there in a policing capacity. They're there in a helping capacity.
And in this city, I believe the students like the police and they trust them, and that isn't always the case.
It isn't the case, and it's unfortunate. But I'll tell you what, you know, a lot of credit goes to the chief and to Commissioner Chong for cultivating and supporting that community policing initiative.
Yeah. Now, 15 years ago, Superintendent Tim Connors tried to establish a special education program in the White Plains District, but the school board at the time rejected it. Do you think this could be at all feasible now? Because the number of children with learning disabilities, no matter what they are, is definitely increasing.
Yeah, I think in the 15 years since we've
was very foresighted of him.
Yeah, yes, and we've done a lot. And you know, in the realm of special education services and pupil personnel services. Here's what I think, and I know the Board of Education shares this philosophy as well. It is always the best thing if we can educate our children, our White Plains children, in their home schools. That's always the best thing. Now, we definitely have to make sure that we have the appropriate ability to service and teach those children dependent upon their personal needs. And sometimes those needs do, you know, exceed our ability to provide that service. However, we've done a lot to be able to bring children back into the district and provide them with high quality supports and services, both academic and otherwise, so that they're no longer in out-of-district placements. They now are in our public schools with their peers.
What
and with
percentage?
I don't know what the percentage that we've brought back has been in the last 15 years, but what I can tell you is the percentage of students out of district has declined, and now we're more in line, I think, with what, you know, sort of the average would be. But we're continuing to look for ways to allow students to be able to attend in our schools.
Good. Now, the properties are coming off pilots. Now, how does that affect your tax budget?
Sure. So
I do not understand.
yeah, it's complicated. So in simplest terms, when properties come off of payment in lieu of taxes and they go back onto the tax rolls, generally it increases the tax base. Right now, our understanding is those properties which we thought were initially going to come back on the rolls are not for this fiscal year. So it doesn't change. It doesn't increase the tax.
Unfortunately.
But
yes,
you know,
right.
yes. But at the same time, you know, I think one of the things that we've understood, and you've talked a lot about with various guests, as you know, the impact of property and property taxes and the ability to continue to grow.
True. Now, what would you like to tell parents, the citizens whose children are out of the school system, and those who want to come to our district and move in, that you want them to know?
Sure. I think the first thing I want them to know is this is all about community. You know, you think of the city of White Plains, but the secret is, and I guess I'm going to let it out of the bag, right? The secret is we're really like a small town. We all know each other. We all support each other. And even though there's 7,000 children in all the various halls in our buildings, it's a very, very close-knit community. So when you make the decision to move to White Plains, you're going to be afforded with the highest quality public education you're going to find. You're also going to have a fantastic city within which to live. And when you look at extracurricular activities, the arts, exposure to the opportunity that we talk about for children, you're going to have an experience that's second to none. Our Board of Education, our faculty and staff members, they're simply outstanding. We have some of the best teachers I've ever had the privilege of working with. And I can tell you that when you make that decision to move to White Plains, you're certainly not going to be disappointed. You know, we were just looking at graduation rates, right? When we talk about graduation rates, I was just looking at our in-school 5-year graduation rate. So it's the August number, not the June number. But our White Plains High School in-school August rate is 96%, John.
That is really up.
It's great. Now, when you look at all students,
that's up 10%.
when you look at all students, it's about 88%. But when you look at in-school, right, and I think that's reflective of our parent and guardian community committed
actually
to
attending the full 4 and that extra time
and get that extra time. Yep.
Yeah.
So it's a great community. And I would certainly encourage anyone who is interested in learning more to contact me. I'm happy to speak to any of you. You ask people, you can find me anywhere.
Your email.
Email, sure. You can reach me at josephRicca.wpcsd.us.
Okay. Well, Dr. Joseph Ricca, Superintendent of Schools of White Plains, you have been heard. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you very much.
Right. John Bailey, good night for People to be Heard.